A billionaire laughs on livestream and says, "Open this safe and I'll marry you." But when the black maid he always ignored steps forward, she cracks it open in 30 seconds, shocking millions. What he doesn't expect is what's inside: hidden letters, old secrets, and a promise that was never meant to be found. Overnight, she's pulled into a world of cameras, lies, and danger, all because she turned a lock. But the biggest twist? The billionaire wasn't mocking her. He was hiding something huge from her, something that could save his empire or break her heart. Why did he keep those letters locked away? And what does he really want from her? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Dawn broke over the Ellis estate, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. Asha Johnson pulled her worn cardigan closer as she made her way up the winding driveway, her sensible shoes crunching on the gravel. The massive mansion loomed before her, its windows still dark, except for the kitchen where the staff was already bustling about. "Morning, Ms. Johnson," called out Tommy, the groundskeeper, as he wrestled with armfuls of extension cords. "Big day today, huh?" Asha nodded, offering a small smile. "Sure is. Need help with those?" "Nah, I got it. But heads up. They've already started setting up the streaming equipment in the main hall." Inside, the usually peaceful mansion was transformed into organized chaos. Technical crews darted about, trailing cables and setting up lights. The air hummed with anticipation and the sharp scent of coffee. Asha moved through the space with practiced ease, her mind ticking through her morning checklist. The main hall needed extra attention today. She worked methodically, dusting the antique furniture and adjusting the fresh flowers in their crystal vases. Everything had to be perfect for the live stream. Mr. Ellis's reputation depended on it. Speaking of Mr. Ellis, she heard his distinctive laugh echoing from the direction of his study. Rowan Ellis emerged, phone pressed to his ear, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months. He caught her eye and mouthed, "Good morning," while continuing his conversation. Yes, the contract's all ready to go," he was saying, pacing the hallway. "This partnership will change everything for the foundation." He paused, running a hand through his dark hair, a gesture Asha had come to recognize as a sign of hidden nervousness. "No, everything's under control. The live stream will be perfect." Asha quietly continued her work, pretending not to notice how his confident smile slipped slightly when he ended the call. She'd worked at the Ellis estate long enough to read the subtle signs of tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened just slightly. The morning flew by in a whirlwind of last-minute preparations. By early afternoon, the mansion was filled with the buzz of excited voices as social media influencers and local celebrities began arriving. Asha watched from the periphery as Rowan worked the room, his charm turned up to full wattage. He made it look effortless, but she caught him occasionally tugging at his collar when he thought no one was looking. "Everything's going viral already," one of the social media managers announced excitedly. "The hashtag is trending." The live stream began right on schedule. Asha kept to the background, making sure water glasses stayed full and keeping everything running smoothly. She couldn't help but admire how naturally Rowan handled the camera, discussing his charitable initiatives with genuine passion. Then came the challenge segment. The energy in the room shifted as Rowan's eyes sparkled with mischief. He gestured toward the imposing safe that had been a fixture in the main hall for as long as Asha had worked there. "You know," he said to the camera, "this old safe has been quite the conversation piece. 10 years, and no one's managed to crack it." He laughed, the sound warm and playful. "I've had experts try and fail. It's become something of a legend around here." The influencers clustered around, phones raised, as Rowan leaned casually against the safe. "Tell you what," he announced, clearly enjoying the moment. "Open this safe and I'll marry you!" The crowd erupted in cheers and laughter. Asha was passing through with a tray of empty glasses when she felt hands pushing her forward. The crowd had spotted her and started chanting, "Try it! Try it!" She froze, her heart thundering in her chest. Rowan's eyes met hers, his expression amused and slightly challenging. The tray in her hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. "Go on then, Ms. Johnson," Rowan said, his voice carrying that teasing note she'd heard so many times before. "Care to try your luck?" The lights felt too bright, the cameras too intrusive. Asha could feel millions of unseen eyes watching through the live stream. Someone took the tray from her trembling hands as the crowd continued to encourage her. Slowly, almost as if in a dream, she found herself stepping toward the safe. Her fingers hovered over the dial, and she could swear the metal was vibrating with the same nervous energy that coursed through her body. Rowan stood nearby, arms crossed, that confident smirk still playing on his lips. Asha stared at the safe, memories of childhood afternoons spent in her father's locksmith shop floating through her mind. The weight of the moment pressed down on her as her fingers finally made contact with the cool metal of the dial. The hum of the live stream equipment and excited whispers filled the grand hall as Asha knelt before the safe. Her navy uniform skirt pooled around her knees on the polished marble floor. Behind her, Rowan maintained his showman's persona, keeping the energy light. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're witnessing either a miracle in the making or another valiant attempt to crack the unconquerable Ellis safe," he announced to the cameras, his voice carrying that signature blend of charm and playful condescension. "Though I must say, Ms. Johnson's confidence is intriguing." Scattered laughter rippled through the crowd. Asha felt her cheeks warm, but she tried to tune out the noise, the cameras, the countless eyes watching both in person and through screens across the world. She closed her eyes, letting her fingertips rest lightly on the cool metal dial. Suddenly, she wasn't in the Ellis mansion anymore. She was 10 years old again, sitting cross-legged on the worn linoleum floor of her father's small locksmith shop. The familiar scents of metal and oil filled her nostrils as her father's gentle voice guided her hands. "Listen with your fingers, baby girl," he'd always said. "Every lock has a story to tell if you know how to hear it." The memory was so vivid she could almost feel his weathered hands guiding hers, teaching her the subtle art of feeling the mechanism's secrets. Her father might be gone now, but his lessons lived on in her hands. A strange calm settled over her. The chattering crowd seemed to fade away as she focused entirely on the safe before her. Her fingers began to move with surprising surety, reading the subtle resistance and clicks of the lock like her father had taught her. The room gradually fell silent as people noticed the change in her demeanor. Even Rowan's running commentary tapered off as he watched her work. The only sounds were the soft whir of camera equipment and the whisper of metal against metal as she turned the dial with precise, measured movements. Left, right, left again. Her fingers danced across the combination lock with an almost musical rhythm. In her mind, she could hear her father's voice. "That's it. Feel the story it's telling you." 30 seconds passed like this. Complete silence broken only by the subtle mechanical sounds of her work. Then, with a satisfying click that seemed to echo through the hushed room, the handle turned smoothly under her grasp. The heavy door swung open. For a moment, nobody moved or spoke. Then the room erupted in gasps and thunderous applause. The live stream chat counter exploded with activity, comments flooding in so fast they became an illegible blur. Asha blinked, almost surprised herself, as she peered into the safe's interior. Inside, she could see a dark, velvet pouch, several neat stacks of important-looking documents, and, somewhat ominously, a sealed envelope marked clearly in flowing script. marriage pledge. Holy shit! Someone in the crowd whispered, the words clearly picked up by the microphones. She actually did it! Asha rose slowly to her feet, her knees slightly shaky. She turned to find Rowan staring at the open safe, his usual smooth expression frozen in disbelief. The confident smirk he'd worn earlier had vanished completely. Through the French doors leading to the adjacent room, she could see his legal team huddled in urgent conversation. One of them, a sharp-featured woman in a severe grey suit, broke away from the group and hurried over to Rowan. Her heels clicked rapidly across the marble floor as she leaned in to whisper something in his ear. Asha watched as the colour slowly drained from Rowan's face. His expression transformed from shocked disbelief to something approaching alarm as he listened to whatever his lawyer was telling him. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every second of his changing expression, every nuance of this unexpected moment. Standing there in her simple maid's uniform, surrounded by influencers and their phones, Asha felt suddenly very small and very confused. What had she just done? The excitement in the room was taking on a strange edge as people began to realize that something more significant than a simple safe-cracking challenge might be unfolding. The livestream chat continued to explode with activity, and the room buzzed with speculation. Phones were raised everywhere, capturing the moment from every angle as Rowan Ellis, the man who was never caught off guard, stood speechless before his opened safe and his suddenly very interesting maid. The silence shattered as Rowan suddenly stepped forward, his professional mask sliding back into place. "I'm so sorry, everyone, but we're going to have to end the live stream here," he announced, his voice carrying that practiced blend of charm and authority. "Technical difficulties. Thank you all for watching and supporting our charitable initiatives." Before anyone could protest, he made a slashing motion across his throat to the production team. The red recording lights blinked out one by one. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd of influencers as security began politely but firmly ushering them toward the exits. The legal team descended on the safe like hawks, carefully removing each document and spreading them across the ornate dining room table. The sharp-featured lawyer, whose name tag read Ms. Patricia Morton, began scanning the papers with growing concern. "Mr. Ellis," she called out, her voice tight. "You need to see this immediately." Rowan strode over, with Asha hanging back uncertainly. She wrung her hands in her apron, feeling responsible for whatever crisis was unfolding. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Ellis. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I can just—" "No, Asha." Rowan cut in, his voice gentler than she'd expected. "You did nothing wrong. Please stay. This involves you now." Ms. Morton cleared her throat. "The situation is complicated. It appears Mr. Theodore Blackwood, the philanthropist behind the $200 million charitable partnership, added some rather unusual clauses to the contract." "Unusual how?" Rowan asked, frowning as he leaned over the documents. Mr. Blackwood was apparently quite concerned about corporate ethics and authentic leadership. Ms. Morton explained, pointing to specific paragraphs. He tied the entire partnership to what he calls proving a capacity for meaningful human connection and commitment. Asha's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "The marriage challenge?" she whispered. "Precisely," Ms. Morton confirmed. "By making that statement on a public live stream, then having someone successfully open the safe containing this contract, you've triggered what amounts to a legally binding public pledge." Rowan ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up for the first time Asha could remember. "Take us somewhere private to review this properly," he ordered. Minutes later, they gathered in Rowan's wood-paneled study. Asha perched uncomfortably on the edge of a leather armchair while the lawyers spread the documents across his massive desk. "The terms are quite specific," Ms. Morton continued. To maintain the partnership, you must appear to be genuinely engaged in a committed relationship with the person who opened the safe, Miss Johnson, for a minimum of 6 months." "This is ridiculous," Rowan muttered, pacing behind his desk. "It can't possibly be legally binding." "Unfortunately, sir, it is. Mr. Blackwood's legal team was very thorough. The contract has been reviewed by multiple firms." A sharp chime interrupted them as Rowan's computer screen lit up with incoming video calls from the board members. Their faces appeared in a grid, expressions ranging from concerned to furious. "Ellis, what the hell happened out there?" demanded one elderly board member, his jowls quivering with agitation. "The internet is already exploding with this story." "The situation is under control," Rowan assured them, though his clenched jaw suggested otherwise. "Under control?" Another board member scoffed. "Your little publicity stunt just turned into a potential catastrophe. Do you have any idea what losing this partnership would mean?" Ms. Morton stepped forward. "If we fail to fulfill the terms, not only would we lose the $200 million, but there's a penalty clause that would trigger a comprehensive audit of all Ellis Corporation's charitable initiatives over the past decade." The room fell deadly silent as the implications sank in. Asha might work as a maid, but even she understood that kind of scrutiny could destroy a company. "The stock is already fluctuating just from the uncertainty," one of the younger board members reported grimly. "We need to stabilize this situation immediately." Rowan's shoulders tensed as he faced the screen. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "It's obvious, isn't it?" The first board member growled. "You and the maid need to appear engaged. Make it convincing. Give the media their story. Keep it up for 6 months until the contract is secured." Asha felt the walls closing in. Her chest tightened as the magnitude of the situation overwhelmed her. Without a word, she stood and fled the study, needing air. She burst out onto the mansion's stone patio, gulping in the early evening air. The sun was setting, painting the manicured gardens in soft orange light that seemed to mock the chaos of the past hour. How had opening a safe turned her whole world upside down? Behind her she heard footsteps. She didn't need to turn to know it was Rowan. His expensive cologne gave him away. He came to stand beside her at the patio railing, both of them staring out at the gardens in silence. When he finally spoke, his usual confidence was gone, replaced by something almost vulnerable. "Asha, he started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. She'd never seen the famously articulate Rowan Ellis at a loss for what to say. She waited, her heart pounding, as he tried again to find the words to ask her to participate in what would be the biggest lie of her life. The sun had long since set behind the mansion's towering walls, leaving only the soft glow of landscape lighting to illuminate the manicured grounds. One by one, the staff had clocked out and headed home, their usual chatter replaced by whispered speculation about the day's events. Outside the gates, news vans began gathering like vultures, their satellite dishes reaching into the darkening sky. Asha's footsteps echoed through the empty halls as she made her way back to the room with the safe. She needed to understand how something as simple as opening a lock had turned her orderly world upside down. The cleaning supplies she'd abandoned hours ago still sat in their caddy, a reminder of how quickly everything had changed. The room looked different in the evening light. Earlier, it had buzzed with excitement and camera flashes. Now it felt almost sacred, like a church after service's end. The safe door still hung open, a silent witness to the chaos it had caused. Kneeling down, Asha began gathering the scattered items she'd knocked over in her haste to step away from the cameras. Her hands moved automatically, sorting papers from pens, returning everything to its proper place. It was comforting, this familiar ritual of creating order from disorder. That's when her fingers brushed against something soft, the velvet pouch she hadn't had time to examine earlier. It was heavier than she expected, made of deep purple fabric that had faded slightly with age. With trembling fingers, she loosened the drawstring. Letters spilled out into her lap, dozens of them, their pages yellowed at the edges. They were carefully folded, each one addressed simply to Asha. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the distinctive slant of Rowan's handwriting. She selected one dated 3 years ago and carefully unfolded it. Dear Asha, today you showed kindness to someone who didn't deserve it. That new client was rude, demanding, and openly racist, yet you maintained your dignity. You offered him water when he coughed, straightened his collar when it was askew, and wished him well as he left. I watched from my office and felt ashamed of my own instinct to put him in his place. Your grace under pressure humbles me. I wish I had your strength. Asha's vision blurred with tears as she reached for another letter, this one from 2 years ago. Dear Asha, I saw you in the garden this morning, singing to yourself while you arranged flowers for the dining room. The sun caught your face just so, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. You have no idea how beautiful you are, do you? How your smile lights up every room you enter. I should tell you these things in person, but I'm a coward when it comes to matters of the heart. Those weren't meant for anyone to see. Rowan's voice startled her so badly she dropped the letters. He stood in the doorway, his usual polish gone. His tie hung loose around his neck, and his hair was mussed from running his hands through it too many times. You wrote these? Asha whispered, though she already knew the answer. All of them. He moved into the room slowly, as if approaching a wild animal that might bolt. Yes, over the past 5 years. Why? Because I'm better with written words than spoken ones. He sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. Because every time I thought about actually giving you one, I convinced myself it would be inappropriate, that you'd feel pressured because I'm your employer, that you couldn't possibly what? Feel the same way? He met her eyes then, and the vulnerability in his gaze made her heart ache. I've spent years watching you, Asha, admiring your kindness, your grace, your quiet strength, but I'm not good at this, at being real with people, at risking rejection. Asha looked down at the letters scattered around her, each one a piece of Rowan's hidden heart. So you wrote letters you never intended to send? It was safer that way. He laughed without humor. And now here we are, forced into a fake engagement when I couldn't even work up the courage to ask you to coffee. Before Asha could respond, sharp footsteps clicked down the hallway. 3 board members appeared in the doorway, their expressions severe. Miss Johnson, might we have a word? The eldest spoke with careful politeness, but his eyes were cold. In private? Rowan started to protest, but Asha stood, smoothing her skirt. It's all right, she said softly, though nothing felt all right anymore. They led her to a small conference room, closing the door with an ominous click. The woman among them spoke first, her voice precise as a surgeon's scalpel. Miss Johnson, we understand this situation is uncomfortable. However, we need to ensure you understand what's at stake here. The partnership? Asha asked, among other things. The eldest man cleared his throat. Your position here, for instance. It would be difficult to justify keeping you on staff if this situation leads to corporate instability. Asha's stomach clenched. Are you threatening to fire me? Of course not, the woman said smoothly. We're simply discussing potential consequences, like the funding for your grandmother's community clinic. It would be a shame if budget cuts forced us to discontinue our charitable support there. The blood drained from Asha's face. The clinic served hundreds of low-income families in her neighborhood. Without Ellis Corporation's donations, it would close within months. We're sure you'll make the right decision, the third board member said, standing to leave. For everyone's sake. They filed out, leaving Asha alone with the weight of their words pressing down on her chest. She made her way back to the hallway on shaky legs, sinking down onto a decorative bench. In her hands, she still clutched Rowan's letters. Beautiful words never meant to be read, now twisted by circumstance into another form of cage. The letters spoke of admiration, of genuine feeling. But how could she trust them now, when everything had become tangled in manipulation and threats? She sat there in the growing darkness, caught between Rowan's unspoken love and the board's very clear warnings, wondering how she'd found herself in a trap built of other people's choices. Sunlight streamed through the breakfast room's tall windows, painting golden rectangles across the polished table. Asha sat rigidly in her chair, the bundle of letters placed carefully beside her plate of untouched food. Across from her, Rowan mechanically stirred his coffee, the spoon making soft, clinking sounds against the china. Neither had slept much. The shadows under their eyes told that story plainly enough. "I read them all," Asha said quietly, breaking the heavy silence. "Every single letter." Rowan's hand stilled on the spoon. "And?" "You wrote about the day I brought soup to Carlos in maintenance when he was sick. About the time I helped Martha's grandson with his math homework. Little things I didn't think anyone noticed." "I noticed everything," Rowan admitted, his voice rough. "I just couldn't find the courage to tell you." Asha smoothed her hand over the top letter. "The board members visited me last night." Rowan's expression darkened. "What did they say?" "They made it clear what would happen if I refused. My job, the clinic funding." She swallowed hard. "But that's not why I'm here right now. I need to know, were these letters real? Or were they just pretty words you wrote to pass the time?" "Asha." Rowan pushed his coffee aside and leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Those letters are the most honest thing about me. I wrote them because I couldn't keep the words inside anymore, even if I was too afraid to share them. They existed long before this contract mess." She studied his face, searching for any hint of deception. "Then why didn't you ever say anything?" "Because I'm a coward," he said simply. "Because I told myself it would be inappropriate, that you'd feel pressured or uncomfortable. Because rejection from you would hurt more than any business deal falling through. And now? Now I hate that this situation is forcing your hand. I don't want you to agree because of threats or obligations, but I can't deny that part of me is selfishly grateful for any chance to be close to you, even if it's not real." Asha took a deep breath. "I'll do it." Rowan blinked. "You will?" "Yes, I'll pose as your fiancé for 6 months, but I have conditions." "Anything?" "Complete honesty between us. No more hiding feelings in unsent letters. If this is going to work, we need to trust each other." She met his gaze steadily. "And I need to know everything about your past. Why you never let anyone close, why you hide behind charm and perfect manners. I can't play this role convincingly if I don't understand the man I'm supposed to be in love with." Relief and something deeper flickered across Rowan's face. "You have my word. Total honesty from this moment forward." Within hours, the mansion transformed into a hive of activity. PR teams swarmed through the rooms, setting up for the press conference. Stylists whisked Asha away to dress her in a borrowed cream-colored silk dress that probably cost more than she made in 3 months. They styled her hair, applied subtle makeup, and gave her a crash course in handling media attention. By noon, Asha stood beside Rowan on the mansion's front steps, facing a sea of cameras and reporters. He held her hand as he made the announcement, his thumb brushing soothingly across her knuckles when he felt her trembling. Yesterday's live stream challenge led to an unexpected but wonderful development. Rowan told the crowd, his public persona firmly in place. When Asha opened that safe, she didn't just crack a lock, she opened my heart as well. While the circumstances may seem unusual, they simply accelerated what was already growing between us. The reporters shouted questions rapid-fire. Miss Johnson, how does it feel to go from Maid to future Mrs. Ellis? Mr. Ellis, what does your board think of this engagement? How long have you two been secretly dating? Asha stood quietly beside Rowan, her spine straight and her expression serene, even as anxiety churned in her stomach. She let him field most of the questions, speaking only when directly addressed, keeping her answers brief and dignified. Love often surprises us, she said at one point, the words feeling strange on her tongue. Sometimes it takes an unexpected moment to make us see what's been in front of us all along. The press conference lasted almost 2 hours. By the end, Asha's face hurt from maintaining a gentle smile, and her hand was cramped from gripping Rowan's. As evening fell, she found herself in the back of a sleek black car, watching the city lights blur past the window. Her small suitcase sat beside her, containing the few belongings she'd packed for the move to Rowan's penthouse. The board had insisted they needed to live together to make the engagement appear genuine. The city grew taller around them as they headed downtown, glass towers reaching toward the darkening sky. Asha pressed her forehead against the cool window, trying to process how completely her life had changed in less than 24 hours. Yesterday morning, she'd been arranging flowers and dusting shelves. Now she wore a borrowed designer dress and a hastily purchased engagement ring, preparing to live with a man who'd written her love letters for years, but never spoken a word of his feelings aloud. The car glided through traffic, carrying her toward her new temporary life. In her lap, she still clutched one of Rowan's letters, a reminder that somewhere in this tangle of publicity and pretense, something real might be trying to bloom. The car pulled up to a towering glass building in the heart of downtown, its sleek facade stretching toward the night sky. Asha stepped out, clutching her small suitcase as she gazed upward, trying to count the floors before they disappeared into darkness. A woman in her 50s with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes approached. Miss Johnson, I'm Mrs. Martinez, Mr. Ellis's house manager. Welcome to your new home. The lobby gleamed with marble and gold accents. Their footsteps echoed as they crossed to a private elevator that opened with a soft chime. Mrs. Martinez pressed her thumb to a biometric scanner, then selected the penthouse button. You'll need to be registered in the security system tomorrow, she explained as they ascended. For now, just call me if you need access. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse foyer. Asha's breath caught at the sight. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering city below. Modern artwork adorned the walls, and plush carpets softened their steps. Let me show you around, Mrs. Martinez said warmly. The main living area is through here. Living room, dining room, and kitchen. Mr. Ellis rarely cooks, but the kitchen is fully stocked. Down this hall are the bedrooms. She opened doors as they walked, revealing spaces that seemed to belong in a magazine. This is Mr. Ellis's office. Private, of course. Here's the library, the home gym, and the media room. They paused at a row of guest rooms. These are all available. Each has its own bathroom and walk-in closet. The sound of the elevator announcing another arrival interrupted them. Rowan stepped out, looking tired but managing a smile. Getting settled in? Mr. Ellis insisted you take this room, Mrs. Martinez said, opening the door closest to the master suite. He thought you might feel more comfortable. The room was larger than Asha's entire apartment, decorated in soft blues and creams. A window seat offered a stunning view of the city, and double doors opened onto a private balcony. Is this okay? Rowan asked quietly. We can change anything you don't like. It's beautiful, Asha managed. Thank you. Mrs. Martinez helped her unpack her few belongings. which looked painfully out of place in the luxurious surroundings. After ensuring Asha had everything she needed, the house manager bid them good night. "Try to get some rest," Rowan said. "Tomorrow will be intense." He wasn't wrong. Morning came too quickly, bringing with it a whirlwind of activity. Rowan knocked on her door at 7 o'clock, already dressed in an impeccable suit. "Ready for media training?" he asked, handing her a cup of coffee made exactly how she liked it, something he must have noticed during her years working at the mansion. The day began with a team of image consultants who analyzed everything from her posture to her speaking patterns. They taught her how to handle invasive questions, when to smile for cameras, and how to deflect personal inquiries gracefully. "Remember," the lead consultant said, "you're not just Asha Johnson anymore. You're the future Mrs. Ellis. Everything you do reflects on the company." Next came the wardrobe consultants, armed with racks of designer clothing and strong opinions about what a billionaire's fiancé should wear. Asha stood patiently as they discussed her color palette and signature style. Throughout it all, Rowan stayed close, stepping in whenever he sensed her discomfort. When one consultant made a dismissive comment about her current wardrobe, Rowan's voice turned sharp. "Miss Johnson's taste is impeccable. We're here to add options, not criticize." During lunch, they escaped to a quiet corner of the penthouse's balcony. Asha picked at her salad while Rowan settled into a chair beside her. "You're handling all this amazingly well," he said softly. "It's overwhelming," she admitted. "Yesterday I was invisible. Today everyone's watching my every move." "I know the feeling." Rowan stared out at the city. "When my mother died, I suddenly went from being the awkward kid she barely acknowledged to the heir of a fortune. Everyone wanted something from me." Asha set down her fork. "You never talk about your mother." "She was complicated, beautiful, brilliant, but cold. She treated everything like a business transaction, including relationships." His fingers tightened around his water glass. "The only time she showed real emotion was when she was angry about some failure of mine. I learned early that caring too much was dangerous." "Is that why you never gave me the letters?" "Partly." He met her eyes. "I convinced myself you deserved better than someone so broken, that keeping my distance was kinder than risking hurt for both of us." The afternoon brought more meetings. Legal teams reviewing public statements, PR specialists outlining their relationship timeline, security experts explaining new protocols. By evening, Asha's head was spinning with all the new information. Finally alone in her room, she pulled out the stack of letters she'd brought from the mansion. The paper was soft from age, the ink slightly faded. She opened one dated 3 years ago. "Dear Asha, today you left flowers on Mrs. Harrison's desk because you overheard her, saying she was sad. Such a small gesture, but it made her entire day. You probably think no one noticed, but I did. I always notice how you spread kindness like others spread gossip." She ran her fingers over the words, wondering how many moments like this he had captured in secret. The letters showed a depth of feeling that contradicted his careful distance, a warmth at odds with his guarded manner. Sitting in the window seat, surrounded by luxury she was struggling to accept as temporary reality, Asha read letter after letter. Each one revealed another layer of the man who had watched her from afar for so long. But could she trust these written confessions? Or were they just beautiful words from someone who had admitted that real emotion terrified him? The city lights sparkled below as she held the latest letter to her chest, torn between hope and doubt, between the sincerity she felt in his written words and the fear that this was all just another business transaction for him, exactly what his mother had taught him love should be. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse as Asha smoothed down her new designer dress. The pale blue fabric felt foreign against her skin. Beautiful, but strange, like everything else in her new life. "You look perfect," Rowan said, appearing in the doorway. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than she used to make in 6 months. "Ready for your first society event?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Asha replied, fidgeting with the diamond bracelet the stylists had insisted she wear. The charity luncheon was being held at the Crystal Room, one of the city's most exclusive venues. As their car pulled up to the entrance, photographers crowded the red carpet. Rowan squeezed her hand. "Just smile and keep walking. I'll be right beside you." Inside, the ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and elaborate flower arrangements. Wealthy donors in designer clothes milled about, sipping champagne and discussing their latest vacations. Asha felt eyes following her every move as Rowan led her through the crowd. "Rowan, darling," a woman in her 50s approached, dripping in jewelry. "We're all simply dying to meet your unexpected fiancé." The pause before "unexpected" was slight but deliberate. Asha forced herself to maintain her smile as the woman looked her up and down. "Mrs. Whitmore," Rowan said smoothly. "This is Asha Johnson, my fiancé. Asha, Margaret Whitmore, chairs our hospital board." "How interesting," Mrs. Whitmore said. "And what did you say your background was, dear?" "I worked at the Ellis estate," Asha replied honestly. "Oh yes, as the help. How very Cinderella of you." Mrs. Whitmore's laugh was sharp. "Though I suppose some men do have a weakness for the exotic." Rowan's posture stiffened. "Actually, Margaret, Asha's intelligence and integrity are what drew me to her. Unlike some, she doesn't need to rely on casual racism or classist remarks to make herself feel important." The room seemed to freeze. Mrs. Whitmore's face flushed red. "Now, if you'll excuse us," Rowan continued, his voice carrying clearly. "I'd rather spend time with people who judge others by their character, not their skin color or bank account." He guided Asha away, his hand protective at the small of her back. Similar scenes played out through lunch, subtle digs met with Rowan's firm rebuttals. By the time they left, Asha felt emotionally drained. In the car, she finally let her shoulders slump. "That was horrible," Rowan finished. "I'm so sorry, Asha. They had no right. I'm used to it." She said quietly, "You shouldn't have to be." He turned to face her. "Listen to me. Those people, their opinions mean nothing. They're so focused on status and appearances that they've forgotten how to see real worth." Tears pricked at her eyes. "Thank you for defending me." "Always," he said simply. Back at the penthouse that evening, they both changed into comfortable clothes. Rowan ordered dinner from Asha's favorite Thai restaurant, and they sat at the kitchen island rather than the formal dining room. "Tell me about your grandmother," Rowan said as they ate. "I've met her at the clinic, but I'd love to know more." Asha's face softened. "She raised me after my parents died. Worked 3 jobs sometimes, but still made sure I had books to read and time to study. She'd come home exhausted, but still help me practice spelling words." "She sounds amazing." "She is. Even now she volunteers at the clinic when she's not watching the neighborhood kids whose parents can't afford childcare." Asha twirled noodles around her fork. "What about you? What was it like growing up in the mansion?" Rowan was quiet for a moment. "Empty. Lots of rooms, not much warmth. My mother was always at some event or meeting. The staff raised me, really. I used to pretend the portraits on the walls were talking to me, just to feel less alone." "That sounds lonely." "It was. I spent a lot of time in the library, reading about other people's adventures since I wasn't allowed to have my own." He gave a slight smile. "My mother would have hated how unpolished those society ladies were today. She believed in cruelty with perfect manners. Asha reached across the island and squeezed his hand. The gesture seemed to surprise them both, but neither pulled away. After dinner, Rowan insisted on making dessert himself. "How hard can it be?" he said confidently, pulling out bowls and ingredients. 20 minutes later, the kitchen was dusted with flour, and something that might have been meant to be chocolate sauce was bubbling ominously on the stove. "Is it supposed to smell like that?" Asha asked, trying not to laugh. "According to the recipe, this is a rich chocolate ganache," Rowan said, frowning at his phone. "Though I don't think ganache usually smokes." He lifted the pot, and a glob of burned chocolate dropped onto the counter with a solid thunk. They stared at it for a moment before both bursting into laughter. The great Rowan Ellis, business genius, defeated by dessert. Asha teased. "In my defense, running a billion-dollar company is easier than baking." He protested, still laughing. The company came with instructions. Asha grabbed a dish towel and started wiping flour off his face. "Here's your instruction. Step away from the stove before you burn down this very expensive penthouse." Their laughter filled the kitchen, genuine and warm, easing the tension of the difficult day. For a moment, they weren't a billionaire and his fake fiancée. They were just two people, covered in flour, finding joy in a shared moment. Rowan looked at the disaster around them and grinned. "Ice cream delivery?" "Ice cream delivery," Asha agreed. "And maybe cooking lessons should be your next business investment. Only if you promise to be there to witness my future kitchen failures." "Deal," she said, and their smiles held no trace of pretense. The early morning sun painted golden streaks across the penthouse's marble floors as Asha padded quietly toward the dining room. Sleep had been elusive, her mind too full of the previous day's events and growing feelings she wasn't ready to examine. She paused in the doorway, surprised to find Rowan already there. He sat at the massive dining table, bent over a sheet of cream-colored paper, writing intently. Sunlight caught his dark hair, highlighting touches of silver at his temples that made him look distinguished rather than old. His usual perfectly pressed suit was absent. Instead, he wore a soft grey sweater that made him seem more approachable, more human. When he noticed her presence, Rowan startled, hastily trying to cover the paper with his arm. A blush crept across his face, something Asha had never seen before on the usually composed businessman. "Good morning," she said softly, taking a few steps closer. "Another letter." Rowan's hand tightened on his pen. Yes. Old habits die hard, I suppose." "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the paper. He hesitated, vulnerability clear in his eyes. Finally, he slid the unfinished letter across the table. "It's not complete," he warned, running a nervous hand through his hair. Asha settled into the chair beside him and began to read. "Dear Asha, yesterday, when those women at the luncheon showed their worst selves, you showed your best. Your dignity in the face of their cruelty amazed me. You stood tall, kept your grace, and proved yourself better than anyone who would try to diminish you. I've watched you handle every challenge these past days with that same quiet strength. You make me want to be worthy of standing beside you, even in this complicated arrangement we've found ourselves in." The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. She blinked them away, touched by the raw honesty in his writing. "Rowan, You don't have to say anything," he said quickly. I want you to know that my admiration for you isn't just for show. It's real. It always has been." A gentle quiet fell between them, broken only by the distant sounds of the awakening city below. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them before they both looked away. The moment was interrupted by Rowan's phone buzzing. The first interview is in an hour, he said, checking the screen. Are you ready for this? Asha nodded, though her stomach fluttered with nerves, as I'll ever be. The day unfolded in a whirlwind of cameras and questions. They sat together on plush couches in various studios, fielding questions about their romance. Rowan kept his hand on the small of her back, his touch warm and steadying. When asked how they fell in love, he spoke about her kindness to others, her quiet intelligence, her dignity, all things he'd written about in his letters. The sincerity in his voice made even Asha almost believe their story was real. Between interviews, they caught glimpses of themselves on newsstands and tabloid websites. Billionaire's Cinderella, from Maid to Fiancé, screamed one headline. Rowan Ellis's shocking romance, declared another. The photos showed them together at various events, and Asha had to admit they looked natural together, like they fit. Late afternoon found them in Rowan's car, driving through familiar streets. Asha's heart clenched as they passed her grandmother's neighborhood. The small houses were worn but well kept, with children playing on narrow front lawns and elderly neighbors chatting on porches. This is where you grew up? Rowan asked softly. Yes, 3 blocks down is where the clinic is. She pointed to a modest building with peeling paint. It's not much, but it's the only medical care some people here can afford. Rowan slowed the car, studying the clinic with intense focus. It needs work. Everything here does. Asha sighed, but the people make it beautiful anyway. I'm going to help rebuild it, Rowan said suddenly, his voice firm. Not just maintain it, really rebuild it, make it everything this community deserves. Asha turned to him, surprised by the determination in his voice. You don't have to. I want to, he interrupted. Not for the publicity, not for the contract. For you, for your grandmother, for everyone here who deserves better. Warmth bloomed in Asha's chest, and she found herself reaching for his hand. He squeezed her fingers gently, and they drove on in comfortable silence. That night, as Asha prepared for bed in her luxurious guest room, she caught her reflection in the mirror. She looked different somehow. Glowing, maybe. Happy despite the strangeness of her situation. The realization hit her like a gentle wave. She was falling in love with Rowan, not his money or his status, but him. The man who wrote heartfelt letters in secret, who defended her fiercely, who wanted to help her community simply because it mattered to her. She heard footsteps in the hallway, and her heart quickened. Through the crack under her door, she saw shadows pause. Rowan was there, just on the other side. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken words. Then, softly, the shadows moved away, and his footsteps faded down the hall. Asha pressed her hand to her racing heart, feeling the weight of everything unsaid between them. In the quiet of her room, she acknowledged the truth. This wasn't pretend anymore, not for her. But whether Rowan's feelings went beyond admiration to real love, that was a question she wasn't ready to answer. The afternoon sun streamed through the penthouse windows as Asha sorted through paperwork at the dining room table. She looked up at the sound of Rowan's footsteps, finding him standing in the doorway with an eager smile. "Clear your schedule for tonight," he said, his eyes twinkling. "We're going to the Metropolitan Donor Gala." Asha's heart skipped. The what? It's the biggest charity event of the season. Everyone who's anyone will be there. He crossed the room and pulled out a chair beside her. "I know it's last minute, but I want you there with me. Not just for show, because I want to share this evening with you." His sincerity made her cheeks warm. "I don't have anything to wear to something like that." "Already taken care of." Rowan grinned and gestured toward her room. "Check your closet." Curious, Asha hurried to her room. There, hanging on her closet door, was the most beautiful gown she'd ever seen. Midnight blue silk that seemed to shimmer like starlight. Beside it sat a velvet box containing delicate diamond earrings. Hours later, Asha stood before her mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The dress fit perfectly, highlighting her curves while remaining elegantly modest. Her hair was swept up in an intricate style, and the diamonds caught the light with every movement. A soft knock at her door made her turn. Rowan stood there in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his expression softening as he took her in. "You look—" he seemed to search for words. "Breathtaking." They rode to the gala in Rowan's sleek black car, the city lights streaming past like falling stars. Asha's hands trembled slightly in her lap until Rowan reached over and took one in his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin. "Nervous?" he asked softly. "A little," she admitted. "These people, they're not exactly used to someone like me." "Someone like you?" His voice grew serious. "You mean someone genuine, someone kind, someone who actually cares about making the world better?" He squeezed her hand. "Trust me, that's exactly what they need to see more of." The Metropolitan Hotel stood like a glittering palace against the night sky. As their car pulled up to the entrance, Asha could see camera flashes already going off. Rowan helped her from the car, keeping her hand firmly in his as they walked the red carpet. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Whispers rippled through the gathering as people recognized them. Asha heard snippets. "Ellis's fiancée, the Maid. Stunning." But instead of feeling self-conscious, she drew strength from Rowan's presence beside her. The ballroom took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across marble floors, and arrangements of white roses filled the air with their sweet scent. Tables draped in silk surrounded a gleaming dance floor where couples already swayed to the orchestra's music. "Mr. Ellis," various voices called out as they made their way through the crowd. Rowan greeted everyone politely, but kept moving, guiding Asha with a gentle hand at the small of her back. When the orchestra began playing a waltz, Rowan turned to her with an outstretched hand. "May I have this dance?" Asha hesitated. "I don't know how—" "Just follow my lead," he whispered, drawing her close. Under the shimmering lights, they moved together as if they'd done this 100 times before. Rowan led with confident grace, and Asha found herself relaxing into the rhythm. She was acutely aware of his hand on her waist, the warmth of his palm against hers, the way his eyes never left her face. "Everyone's staring," she murmured. "Let them," he replied. "They're just jealous that I'm dancing with the most beautiful woman in the room." As the song ended, Rowan's expression shifted to one of barely contained excitement. "Come with me. I have something to show you." He led her through French doors into a courtyard that had been transformed into a magical garden. Tiny lights twinkled in the trees, and the fountain's peaceful splash provided perfect background music. "Asha," Rowan said, pulling something from his jacket. "I want to show you this." He unfolded several papers. Architectural drawings, she realized. As she looked closer, her heart stopped. The sketches showed a modern medical facility, but one that clearly incorporated elements of the existing clinic building she knew so well. "Is this your grandmother's clinic?" Rowan confirmed. "Construction started yesterday. I wanted to wait until everything was approved before telling you, but—" He gestured to the drawings. "It will have state-of-the-art equipment, more examination rooms, a proper waiting area. But we're keeping the original facade and the garden your grandmother planted. The heart of it will stay the same." Tears spilled down Asha's cheeks before she could stop them. Without thinking, she reached up and pulled Rowan's face to hers, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that contained every emotion she couldn't put into words. His arms wrapped around her, holding her close as he kissed her back with equal fervor. The sound of applause made them break apart. A small crowd had gathered at the courtyard doors, smiling at what they assumed was a romantic moment between an engaged couple. But Asha knew this kiss had been real. Completely, wonderfully real. The drive home was filled with warm silence, broken only by the soft sound of their breathing and the quiet purr of the engine. Rowan held her hand the entire way, their fingers intertwined on the console between them. Neither felt the need to speak. The evening had said everything necessary. Asha watched the city lights blur past her window, feeling the gentle pressure of Rowan's hand in hers. For the first time since this whirlwind began, she felt completely, perfectly at peace. Whatever came next, this moment, this night, had been real. Sunlight streamed through the penthouse windows as Asha slowly woke to an unfamiliar but delicious aroma. She blinked sleepily, her mind still filled with memories from the previous night's gala. The dancing, the kiss, the warmth of Rowan's hand in hers during the drive home. The smell grew stronger, drawing her from her bed. She pulled on her robe and followed the scent to the kitchen, where she found an unexpected sight. Rowan Ellis, Billionaire CEO, wearing an apron and carefully flipping pancakes at the stove. "Good morning," he said, turning to flash her that heart-melting smile. "I hope you're hungry." "You cook?" Asha asked, settling onto a bar stool at the kitchen island. "I'm learning," he admitted, sliding a plate toward her. The pancakes were slightly misshapen but golden brown. "These might not be perfect, but I wanted to do something special after last night." Asha's chest warmed at the memory. "Last night was perfect," she said softly. Rowan reached across the counter to take her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. For a moment, everything felt right in the world. The morning sun, the smell of breakfast, the tenderness in Rowan's eyes. The peaceful bubble burst as rapid footsteps approached. Sarah, Rowan's assistant, burst into the kitchen, her face pale and worried. She clutched a tablet in her hands. "Mr. Ellis, we have a situation," she said, her voice tight. "It just broke 20 minutes ago." She placed the tablet on the counter, and Asha's stomach dropped as she read the headline splashed across the screen. "Rowan Ellis staged engagement, love letters faked to manipulate his maid." The pancakes forgotten, Asha pulled the tablet closer, her hands shaking as she scrolled through the article. There were images of documents, what appeared to be internal memos discussing the planned live stream event, dated months before it happened. Meeting minutes showing Rowan supposedly orchestrating every detail, including having someone teach Asha how to crack the safe. "This is ridiculous," Rowan said, his face darkening as he read over her shoulder. "These are complete fabrications." But Asha couldn't stop reading. The article included testimonies from supposed inside sources claiming Rowan had hired people to write the love letters, creating a paper trail of false affection. That he'd chosen her specifically because she was vulnerable, a maid who wouldn't question such an opportunity, who would be grateful enough to play along. "Asha," Rowan said urgently, reaching for her hand. "None of this is true. You know me. You've read the real letters." She pulled away from his touch, her mind spinning. "Do I know you?" she whispered. "Do I really?" "Yes." The desperation in his voice made her flinch. "Everything I've shared with you has been real. The letters, the clinic, last night, all of it." Sarah cleared her throat. "I'll start working on a statement," she said, backing out of the kitchen. "And I'll call legal." But Asha barely heard her. She was thinking about how perfectly everything had fallen into place. The live stream challenge, the convenient contract, the letters that said exactly what she would want to hear. "It makes sense," she said quietly, standing up from the bar stool. "It all makes too much sense." "What are you talking about?" Rowan moved around the counter toward her, but she stepped back. "A billionaire falling in love with his maid, writing her secret love letters for years? It's like a fairy tale. Tears burned in her eyes. But fairy tales aren't real, are they? This is real, Rowan insisted. Those documents are fake. Someone is trying to destroy what we have. What we have? Asha laughed bitterly. What do we have, Rowan? A fake engagement that turned into a convenient arrangement? Were you just being kind to make it more believable? Was the clinic just another way to keep me playing along? Stop it, he said sharply. You're letting them manipulate you. Everything I've done, everything I've said to you has been genuine. But doubt had taken root in Asha's heart, poisoning every sweet memory. The dance at the gala, the kiss in the courtyard. Had it all been carefully orchestrated? Had she been nothing more than a pawn in some elaborate corporate game? I need to go, she said, turning toward her room. Asha, please. Rowan followed her as she began gathering her things, shoving clothes into her bag with trembling hands. Don't do this. Stay and let me prove the truth to you. She couldn't look at him, afraid she would crumble if she saw the pain in his eyes. The truth. I don't even know what that is anymore. The truth is in every letter I wrote you, he said. In every moment we've shared. In every time I wanted to tell you how I felt, but couldn't find the courage. Asha paused, her hand on the doorknob. Maybe that's what hurts the most, she said softly. That I believed you, that I was starting to... She couldn't finish the sentence. Instead, she pulled open the door and walked out, ignoring Rowan's pleas behind her. The elevator ride to the lobby felt endless, her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Outside, the morning sun felt too bright, too cheerful. She hailed a taxi, giving the driver her old address in a voice that shook. As the car pulled away from the curb, she finally allowed herself to look back at the towering building where she'd begun to believe in fairy tales. The drive to her apartment passed in a blur. She barely registered, paying the driver or climbing the familiar stairs to her third-floor walk-up. Only when she was inside, surrounded by the modest furnishings of her real life, did the full weight of everything crash over her. Asha fell onto her bed, burying her face in her pillow as sobs racked her body. She cried for the dreams she'd allowed herself to believe, for the feelings she'd begun to trust, for the heart she'd foolishly given to a man who had apparently planned every moment of their story. The morning sun continued to shine through her window, indifferent to how thoroughly her world had shattered. The night stretched endlessly in Asha's small apartment. Her pillow grew damp with tears as memories of the past weeks played through her mind like a cruel movie. Every smile, every gentle touch, every soft word from Rowan now felt calculated and false. Her phone buzzed repeatedly on the nightstand, but she couldn't bear to look at it, knowing his name would light up the screen. Around 3 a.m, exhaustion finally won over heartbreak, and she fell into a fitful sleep. But the morning came too soon, harsh sunlight streaming through her thin curtains. Asha's eyes felt swollen and raw, her throat tight from crying. She forced herself to sit up, knowing she needed to find work. Her savings wouldn't last long. She had kept the number of a cleaning service that often hired temporary workers. With trembling fingers, she dialed, grateful when they offered her an immediate position at an office building downtown. The familiar routine of cleaning would help, she told herself. It would bring back normalcy. At 7:30 a.m, Asha arrived at the glass and steel building, wearing her old uniform. The work was straightforward. Vacuuming carpets, wiping windows, emptying trash bins. She threw herself into each task, trying to lose herself in the rhythm of cleaning. Every time her phone vibrated in her pocket, she pressed her lips together and worked harder. "You okay, honey?" asked one of the regular cleaners, an older woman named May. You look like you're trying to scrub away more than just dirt. Asha managed a weak smile. Just a rough day, she said, turning back to the window she was cleaning. Her reflection stared back at her, and for a moment she saw herself as she had looked at the gala. Elegant, hopeful, in love. She scrubbed harder, erasing the image. Meanwhile, across town, Rowan Ellis's office had become a battlefield. Papers littered his desk, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. His tie hung loose around his neck as he paced, phone pressed to his ear. "I want them gone," he growled into the phone. "Every board member who had access to those documents. Every single one." His assistant tried to remind him about important meetings, but Rowan waved her away. He couldn't focus on business when his world was crumbling. When Asha wouldn't answer his calls. By afternoon, he had fired 3 board members and cancelled all appointments. He sat alone in his office, a stack of his old letters to Asha spread before him. His fingers traced the words he had written years ago, remembering how his heart had pounded each time he saw her in the halls of his mansion, how he had poured his feelings onto paper because he was too afraid to speak them aloud. "Mr. Ellis," his assistant called through the door. "The press is requesting no comments." He snapped. No interviews, no statements. The second day followed the same pattern. Asha threw herself into work, taking extra shifts to exhaust herself beyond thinking. She avoided television sets in store windows, turned away from newspapers at stands. She couldn't bear to see their story twisted into tabloid fodder. Rowan's spiral deepened. He barely slept, spending hours reviewing security footage, trying to determine who had accessed his safe, who had stolen and altered his private documents. 2 more board members were dismissed, but it brought him no satisfaction. Without Asha, victory felt hollow. On the 3rd night, Asha found herself walking toward her grandmother's clinic. The construction site was quiet at this hour, moonlight casting long shadows across the partially completed walls. She touched the fresh bricks, remembering how proud and happy she had felt when Rowan showed her the plans. Was any of it real? She whispered to the night air. Tears began falling again as she sank down onto a stack of lumber. Did you ever really care? Or was I just convenient? Just someone easy to manipulate? The clinic had seemed like such a beautiful gesture, Rowan understanding exactly what mattered most to her. Now she wondered if it had been carefully calculated, a golden cage designed to keep her compliant and grateful. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Rowan's number. The text was from an unfamiliar source. "Ms. Johnson, this is Marcus Bennett, former board member of Ellis Corp. We need to meet urgently. There's something you should know about the scandal." Asha stared at the message, her heart pounding. She had seen Marcus Bennett at board meetings, a serious man with steel-grey hair who rarely spoke. What could he possibly want to tell her? Another buzz. "Please, it's about the documents, and about Rowan." She sat there for a long moment, the phone heavy in her hand, while construction equipment cast strange shadows in the moonlight. Everything in her wanted to delete the message, to keep running from the pain. But a small voice inside whispered that she deserved to know the whole truth, whatever it might be. The night air had grown chilly, and Asha pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, she typed a response with trembling fingers. When and where? The morning sun cast long shadows across the nearly empty cafe as Asha arrived 15 minutes early for her meeting. Her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee she hadn't touched, watching condensation drip down the sides. The cafe, tucked away on a quiet street corner, felt worlds away from the glittering corporate towers where her life had changed so dramatically. The bell above the door chimed, and Marcus Bennett walked in. He looked different without his usual power suit, wearing a simple sweater and slacks, his steel-grey hair slightly disheveled. His eyes darted around before settling on Asha. "Ms. Johnson," he said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. "Thank you for meeting me." Asha studied him carefully. "Why did you want to see me?" Marcus ordered coffee from a passing waitress before turning back to Asha. His shoulders sagged with what looked like genuine exhaustion. "Because what they did to you and Rowan was wrong, and because I can't live with being part of it anymore." "Part of what exactly?" Asha's voice trembled slightly. "The scandal, the leaked documents, all of it." He pulled out a thick manila envelope and placed it on the table. It was orchestrated by certain board members who wanted to force Rowan's hand on a merger deal. Asha's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. "What?" "Those letters you found, Rowan's letters to you, they were real, all of them, written long before any of this contract business existed." Marcus's voice grew softer. "The board found them in his safe during a routine audit last year. They kept that information, waiting for the right moment to use it." Asha's throat felt tight. "But the documents they released, forged, all of them." He pulled papers from the envelope, spreading them across the table. "Here are the original board meeting minutes, showing when they first discovered the letters. And here," he slid over several emails, "is the correspondence planning how to use them against both of you." Asha's hands shook as she read through the evidence. Emails between board members discussing how to neutralize the Maid situation. Plans to edit documents and release them at the perfect moment to cause maximum damage. Her eyes filled with tears as she saw how carefully they had plotted to destroy her relationship with Rowan. "But why?" she whispered. "Why go to all this trouble?" Marcus sighed heavily. "Rowan has been blocking a merger that would make the board members millions but cost thousands of employees their jobs. They thought if they could break him, break both of you, he'd be more compliant. And the timing of the scandal? Perfect, from their perspective. Right when you were both happiest, most vulnerable." He looked genuinely ashamed. "I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson. I watched it happen and said nothing." Asha sat back, trying to process everything. "How do I know you're telling the truth now?" Marcus pulled out his phone, playing a recording. Board members' voices filled the quiet cafe, discussing their plan in detail. Asha recognized several of them from meetings she had attended with Rowan. "I kept evidence," Marcus said, stopping the recording. "I told myself it was for protection, but really, I just couldn't stomach what we were doing to two people who genuinely cared for each other." Tears rolled down Asha's cheeks as the full truth sank in. Rowan's letters had been real. His feelings had been real. She had doubted him, walked away from him, while he had been fighting these people alone. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "That's up to you." Marcus gathered the documents back into the envelope and handed it to her. "But Rowan needs to know the truth. He's been tearing the company apart trying to find who betrayed him, but he doesn't know how deep it goes." Asha clutched the envelope to her chest, remembering Rowan's face the last time she saw him. Desperate, pleading with her to stay. She had been so hurt, so quick to believe the worst. She stood up suddenly, nearly knocking over her untouched coffee. "Thank you," she said to Marcus, "for telling me the truth." He nodded solemnly. "Make it right, Ms. Johnson, before they destroy everything he's built." Asha hurried out of the cafe, her mind racing. The morning sun felt warmer now, or maybe it was hope flooding back into her heart. She checked her phone for bus schedules, finding one that would take her to Ellis Corporation headquarters in 20 minutes. At the bus stop, she opened the envelope again, reading through the evidence one more time. Each document felt like a key, unlocking the truth she should have known all along. Rowan had never betrayed her. He had been fighting for her, for them all along. The bus approached, its brakes squealing as it stopped. Asha boarded, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. As she found a seat, her heart pounded with equal measures of determination and regret. She had to make this right, had to find Rowan and tell him everything she had learned. The bus pulled away from the curb, carrying her toward the towering business district where Rowan's office waited. She watched the city scroll past her window, each mile bringing her closer to the truth, to him, to what she hoped would be their second chance. The Ellis Corporation headquarters loomed before Asha, its glass walls reflecting the late morning sun. Her bus fare card trembled in her hand as she stepped off onto the crowded sidewalk. Security guards at the entrance gave her questioning looks, but one recognized her face from recent news coverage and waved her through with a respectful nod. The lobby buzzed with unusual activity. Shareholders in expensive suits hurried toward the main auditorium, their voices echoing off marble floors. A large screen displayed "Annual Shareholder Meeting in Progress" in bold letters. Asha's heart pounded as she followed the crowd. Through the auditorium's double doors, she could hear raised voices. One she recognized as Rowan's, strained with tension she had never heard before. "My leadership has always put our employees first," he was saying as Asha slipped inside. The vast auditorium was packed. Hundreds of faces turned toward the stage where Rowan stood at a podium, his shoulders rigid beneath his tailored suit. Behind him, board members sat in a row, their expressions smug. Yet recent events suggest otherwise. One of them interrupted. "The staged engagement scandal has damaged our reputation. Perhaps it's time for new leadership." Asha's fingers tightened around the envelope of evidence. She began moving down the aisle, her simple dress standing out among the sea of business attire. Whispers followed her progress. "Isn't that her?" "The maid. What's she doing here?" Halfway to the stage, Rowan noticed the ripple of murmurs and looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded room. He froze mid-sentence, his knuckles white against the podium. "I have something to say," Asha called out, her voice stronger than she felt. More whispers erupted as she approached the stage. "This is a closed meeting," one board member snapped, but Rowan held up his hand. "Let her speak." His voice was hoarse with emotion. A security guard handed Asha a microphone. She climbed the steps to the stage, her legs shaking but her spine straight. The bright lights felt hot on her skin as she faced the crowd. "My name is Asha Johnson," she began, "and everything you've heard about Rowan Ellis manipulating me is a lie." The room erupted in whispers again. Asha opened the envelope, spreading the documents on the podium. "The real manipulation came from members of this board. They discovered private letters Rowan wrote to me years ago. Beautiful, honest letters he never sent, because he thought someone like him couldn't approach someone like me." Her voice cracked slightly. "They held on to that information, waiting for the perfect moment to use it against him." She held up the emails, her hand steady now. "These prove they planned it all. They forged documents, created fake testimonies, released everything at once to make it look like Rowan orchestrated our entire relationship." The crowd stirred. Several shareholders leaned forward, frowning at the board members. "But why?" someone called out. "Because Rowan refused to approve a merger that would have made them rich while costing thousands of workers their jobs." Asha's voice grew stronger. "He's been fighting them for months, protecting people they see as disposable, just like they saw me as disposable." She turned to look at Rowan, whose eyes shone with unshed tears. "I was wrong to doubt him. This man writes letters instead of sending them because he's afraid of being vulnerable. He rebuilds community clinics without wanting credit. He defends people others look down on, not because it's good publicity, but because it's right." Reaching into her pocket, Asha pulled out one of Rowan's old letters. "This is from 2 years ago. He wrote about watching me help an elderly security guard who had fallen, how my kindness moved him. She looked directly at the board members. You can't fake that kind of detail, that kind of heart, and you can't lead a company without it. The auditorium had grown completely silent. Asha could hear her own heartbeat as she continued. I'm not here because I'm angry about what you did to me. I'm here because a good man is being punished for his integrity, for caring about more than money, for seeing people, all people, as worthy of respect. Shareholders began standing, turning to face the board members with hard expressions. One prominent investor stepped forward. I move for an immediate investigation into the board's actions, he announced firmly. Others quickly seconded the motion. The board members' smug expressions crumbled. One tried to speak, but was drowned out by calls for security. Guards appeared at both ends of the stage. These documents will be examined by our legal team, the lead investor said, collecting the evidence from Asha. 2 security guards began escorting the protesting board members toward a side exit. The room buzzed with activity, but Asha barely noticed. She was watching Rowan, who had not moved from his spot near the podium. He took one step toward her, then another, his usual confidence replaced by something raw and vulnerable. Asha, he said, his voice breaking on her name. The heavy boardroom doors closed behind them with a soft click, muffling the chaos of reporters and shareholders still buzzing inside. Rowan guided Asha down a quiet corridor, his hand trembling slightly against the small of her back. The afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. They reached a secluded alcove, far enough from the commotion that their breathing seemed loud in the stillness. Rowan turned to face her, his usual polished demeanor cracking like thin ice. I'm so sorry, Asha, he whispered, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I should have been stronger, should have protected you better. His voice caught. When they started threatening you, I thought I could handle it quietly. I thought if I just managed things behind the scenes. Asha touched his arm gently. You were trying to shield me, and I failed. He pressed his palms against his eyes. I should have told you about their threats immediately, should have trusted you with the truth. Instead, I let my fear of losing you make me hesitate, and that hesitation nearly cost me everything. Rowan. Asha's voice was soft. Even when I doubted the letters, when everything seemed like a lie, there was this tiny part of me that kept hoping. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly vulnerable. Hoping that what I felt between us was real. Hoping that you truly loved me. Rowan stepped closer, his hands finding hers. I never wanted a fake engagement, Asha. The words tumbled out, urgent and raw. I never wanted any of this elaborate charade. I wanted you, just you. To Asha's surprise, Rowan slowly sank to one knee. There were no cameras here, no contracts, or obligations, just a man looking up at her with his heart in his eyes. From the first day you started working at the estate, you fascinated me. He continued, his voice thick with emotion. Your quiet strength, your dignity, the way you treated everyone with such genuine kindness. He squeezed her hands. I wrote those letters because I couldn't stop thinking about you, but I was too afraid to send them. Afraid you'd think I was taking advantage. Afraid I wasn't worthy of someone with your integrity. Tears spilled down Asha's cheeks. She could feel the truth of his words resonating in her chest, filling all the empty spaces doubt had left behind. But there was one more thing she needed. Before you say anything else, she whispered, holding his gaze, I need you to promise me something. She took a deep breath. Promise that whatever future we build will be founded on complete honesty. No more hiding fears or protecting each other from the truth. Her voice grew stronger. I want an equal partnership, Rowan. Not a billionaire and his wife, but two people facing everything together. Rowan stood, bringing their joined hands to his heart. "I swear it," he said fervently. "No more walls, no more secrets. Everything I am, everything I have, it's yours to share, as equals." Asha's heart swelled with joy and certainty. She looked at this complicated, tender-hearted man she'd grown to love and whispered softly, "Then ask me again." Rowan took a steadying breath, his eyes never leaving Asha's face as he lowered himself to one knee once more. Beyond the glass doors of the corridor, camera flashes erupted like lightning as reporters spotted them, but neither Rowan nor Asha paid any attention to the growing crowd. "Asha Johnson," he began, his voice tender and clear. "I've spent years writing letters I was too afraid to give you, hiding my feelings behind ink and paper." His hands trembled slightly as he reached for hers. "But I'm not hiding anymore. I love your gentle spirit, your unwavering integrity, and the quiet strength that makes you stand up for what's right even when it terrifies you." More flashes illuminated the corridor, casting dancing shadows across their faces. Asha's eyes glistened with tears as Rowan continued. "I love how you see the good in people, how you treat everyone with dignity regardless of their status or wealth." He swallowed hard, emotion making his voice rough. "I love that you've taught me to be vulnerable, to trust, to believe that I deserve real happiness." From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box, not the elaborate one from his PR team for their staged engagement, but a simple dark blue case that looked worn, as if he'd carried it for a long time. "This was my grandmother's ring," he explained softly. "She was the only person who ever showed me unconditional love before I met you. She taught me that true worth isn't measured in dollars, but in how we treat others." Opening the box revealed a classic, solitaire diamond set in platinum, beautiful but understated, just like Asha herself. "I'm not asking as a billionaire fulfilling a contract. I'm not asking because of business obligations or public pressure." His eyes shone with sincerity. "I'm asking because I want to spend the rest of my life proving I deserve your love. Asha Johnson, will you marry me?" Asha's face lit up with pure joy as tears spilled down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes." She pulled him to his feet and into her arms as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Rowan wrapped her in a tight embrace, burying his face in her hair as cameras continued flashing through the windows. "I love you," he murmured against her temple. "So much." Their moment was interrupted by Harrison, Rowan's head of security, clearing his throat discreetly. "Sir, the media crowd is growing. We should get you both out of here." Rowan nodded, keeping one arm firmly around Asha's waist. "Is the back exit clear?" "Yes, sir. Cars waiting." Harrison and his team created a protective barrier around them as they made their way through service corridors and down to the parking garage. Away from the cameras and chaos, Asha leaned against Rowan in the back seat of his car, admiring how the ring caught the light. "It's perfect," she said softly. "Simple but beautiful." Rowan kissed her temple. "Like you. My grandmother would have adored you." The drive to the penthouse was peaceful, their fingers intertwined as they watched the city scroll past. When they arrived, Rowan led Asha straight to the kitchen. "First order of business as your real fiancé," he announced with a grin, "is making you dinner." Asha laughed. "Are you sure that's wise? Remember the dessert incident? Hey, those cookies were only slightly burned." He pulled her close, swaying with her playfully. "Besides, I've been practicing. Had to prove I could take care of my future wife properly." They spent the next hour cooking together, or rather, Asha gently corrected Rowan's enthusiastic but clumsy attempts while they talked about everything and nothing. Their hopes, their fears, their dreams for the future. No masks, no pretense, just honest conversation between two people in love. I want to expand the clinic project, Rowan said as they sat down to eat. Not just rebuilding your grandmother's facility, but creating a whole network of community health centers. Asha's eyes lit up. Really? He nodded. You've shown me how much need there is in underserved neighborhoods. I want to make a real difference, not for publicity or tax write-offs, but because it's right. We could create educational programs too, Asha suggested excitedly. Job training, literacy classes. Rowan's smile was tender. Well, yes. She straightened in her chair. You promised an equal partnership, remember? I may not know much about running a corporation, but I know my community's needs. You're absolutely right. He reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Partners in everything. After dinner, they curled up together on the living room sofa, the city lights twinkling beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Asha rested her head on Rowan's chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. What are you thinking about? He asked softly, running his fingers through her hair. How different this feels from our fake engagement. She replied, That was all flash and show. This feels real. He finished, because it is. They talked late into the night, making plans and sharing dreams until Asha dozed off against his shoulder. Rowan carried her gently to bed, his heart swelling as she curled trustingly into his side. Once he was sure she was deeply asleep, he slipped out of bed and went to his desk. Taking out his finest stationery, the same kind he'd used for all his previous letters, he began to write, My dearest Asha, tonight, as you sleep beside me for the first time as my true fiancé, I want to make one final promise. Every word I wrote in those old letters was real, but they were born of longing and fear. This letter is different. This is a promise for our future. I promise to love you openly and honestly, to never again let fear keep me from showing you my heart. I promise to be your equal partner, your strongest supporter, and your most trusted friend. I promise to face whatever challenges come our way together, standing beside you rather than trying to shield you. Most of all, I promise that every day for the rest of our lives, I will work to be worthy of the precious gift of your love. Forever yours, Rowan. He folded the letter carefully and returned to their bedroom, placing it on her pillow where she would find it in the morning. Sliding back into bed, he gathered her sleeping form close, marveling at how perfectly she fit in his arms. Asha sighed contentedly in her sleep, nestling closer as a soft smile curved her lips. The moonlight streaming through the windows caught the diamond on her finger, making it sparkle like a star fallen to earth, a promise of light and love that would guide them through whatever the future might hold. 1 month later, on a crisp autumn morning, the Ellis estate gardens bloomed with fresh flowers and twinkling lights. The usually imposing mansion had been transformed into an intimate sanctuary, with only 50 chairs arranged in neat rows on the manicured lawn. White roses and lilies adorned every surface, their sweet fragrance mingling with the morning air. Asha stood before an antique mirror in one of the mansion's guest rooms, her grandmother carefully adjusting the delicate lace veil in her hair. The wedding dress was simple but elegant, an ivory silk gown that flowed like water when she moved. Your father would be so proud, her grandmother said softly, smoothing invisible wrinkles from the dress. He always said you had magic in your fingers, just like him. Asha touched the worn locksmith's pin fastened inside her. Bouquet, her something old, a reminder of where she came from. I wish he could be here. He is, baby. Her grandmother patted her cheek. He's right here in your heart. A gentle knock at the door preceded Maria, one of the clinic's nurses peeking in. "It's time." Outside, Rowan stood beneath an arch woven with white roses and greenery, looking both nervous and radiantly happy in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. The small gathering of guests included the clinic's staff, several loyal employees from Rowan's company, and a handful of true friends who had stood by them through everything. When the music began, not the traditional wedding march, but a sweet melody played on acoustic guitar, Rowan's breath caught in his throat. Asha appeared at the end of the flower-strewn aisle, her grandmother proudly escorting her. She practically glowed with happiness, her dark eyes shining with joyful tears. As she reached him, Rowan took her hands in his, squeezing them gently. "You're beautiful," he whispered. The ceremony was short, but deeply meaningful. They had written their own vows, speaking from their hearts about trust, partnership, and unconditional love. When Rowan's voice cracked with emotion partway through, Asha squeezed his hands reassuringly, drawing a warm chuckle from their guests. "I promise to love you completely and honestly," Asha said, her voice clear and strong. "To be your partner in all things, to share your burdens and your joys. I promise to keep your heart as safely as I once opened your safe." Rowan laughed softly at that, wiping away a tear. "And I promise to love you forever, to honor your strength and your kindness, to be worthy of the trust you've placed in me. I promise to stand beside you always, facing whatever comes together." When they were pronounced husband and wife, their kiss was sweet and tender, accompanied by enthusiastic applause from their loved ones. Rose petals showered down around them as they walked back up the aisle together, both beaming with joy. The reception was held at the newly rebuilt community clinic, now a modern facility bustling with activity even on a Saturday. The building's clean lines and welcoming atmosphere perfectly balanced form and function, just as Asha had envisioned. Streamers and balloons transformed the waiting area into a festive space, while tables laden with food filled the community room. Local families began arriving, mixing easily with the wedding guests in a true community celebration. Children played in the newly installed playground while their parents chatted with clinic staff and explored the improved facilities. The atmosphere was exactly what Asha and Rowan had wanted: joyful, inclusive, and focused on bringing people together. During the celebration, Rowan clinked his glass for attention. "Today isn't just about Asha and me," he announced, his arm around his new wife's waist. "It's about community, about helping each other, about making positive change. So I'm thrilled to announce that for the next year, Ellis Corporation will match every donation made to this clinic dollar for dollar." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Asha's grandmother wiped away happy tears as several community members immediately stepped forward with donations. It was exactly the kind of practical, meaningful gesture that demonstrated how much Rowan had grown. As the afternoon wore on, Asha and Rowan shared their first dance in the clinic's courtyard, swaying gently to the same guitar melody from their ceremony. "Happy?" Rowan murmured against her temple. "Perfectly," she replied, nestling closer. When the sun began to set, they bid farewell to their guests and headed home to their penthouse. Asha had long since moved all her belongings there, but today felt different. Today she was truly coming home as Rowan's wife. They changed into comfortable clothes and settled onto their favorite spot on the balcony, watching the sky paint itself in brilliant oranges and pinks. Rowan wrapped a soft blanket around their shoulders before reaching into his pocket. "I have something for you," he said softly, producing an envelope. "My last letter, and the first one I'm giving you myself." Asha's hands trembled slightly as she opened it, recognizing the familiar stationery. She read aloud, "My beloved Asha, you opened my safe in 30 seconds, but you opened my heart for a lifetime. In you, I found not just love, but courage, integrity, and the strength to become a better man. You are my miracle, my partner, my home. Today and always, I am yours. All my love, Rowan. Tears spilling down her cheeks, Asha set the letter aside and wrapped her arms around her husband. They held each other close as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in glorious color. Without words, they rose together and walked inside, their fingers intertwined, stepping confidently toward their bright future together. As they crossed the threshold, Asha's grandmother's words from that morning echoed in her heart. Love, like the best kind of magic, could unlock any door, even the ones we build around our own hearts. She and Rowan were living proof of that truth, and their story was only beginning. Hand in hand, they moved into their home, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. Together. The warm glow of evening settled over the penthouse as Asha and Rowan returned from their celebration. Still in their wedding attire, they shared a quiet dinner of leftover cake and champagne, neither wanting to change out of the clothes that marked this special day. "Walk with me?" Rowan asked softly, extending his hand. Asha took it, her wedding dress rustling as they moved through their home. The city lights twinkled beyond the windows, casting gentle shadows across the hardwood floors. They paused at the former guest room, where Asha had first stayed. Rowan pushed open the door, revealing his surprise. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with copies of her favorite novels. A plush reading chair sat beneath a warm lamp, with a cozy throw blanket draped across its arm. "When did you do this?" Asha whispered, touching the spines of her beloved books. "Last week, while you were visiting your grandmother." Rowan smiled. "I remembered every title you mentioned in our late-night talks." Moving to his study, Rowan led her to the safe, the very same one that had changed their lives months ago. He spun the dial with practiced ease, the mechanism clicking softly. Inside lay a single leather-bound journal titled "Our Future Plans" in gold lettering. They settled onto the study's leather couch, and Rowan opened to the first blank page. "I thought we could write our dreams together," he said, uncapping a pen. "No more secret letters, no more contracts, just us, planning our future." For hours they filled pages with their shared visions, expanding the clinic into a full medical center, creating scholarship programs for underprivileged students, launching community centers across the city. Their handwriting mingled on the pages, his precise script alongside her flowing curves. "Did you ever imagine this?" Asha asked, touching the journal's pages. "That day when I first opened the safe?" "Never," Rowan admitted, pulling her closer. "I was so afraid to let anyone see the real me. And you were always so much more than just a maid. You saw through every wall I built." Together, they placed the journal back in the safe. The lock clicked shut beneath their joined hands, not a barrier anymore, but a protector of their shared dreams. Fingers intertwined, they walked toward their bedroom, ready to begin writing their story together. "Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart."